Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode. As most of you know who are watching this, I'm kind of going through Scott Adams' book, Win Bigly, and just kind of commenting on it, and hopefully teaching you a few things in the process. Now, in this video, we're going to go over part 3, in which Scott discusses kind of how Donald Trump does what he does. And I'm going to focus on one moment in particular that I think is quite relevant, which is Donald Trump's Rosie O'Donnell moment. And I'm going to mention some other things that Scott mentions, but I'm not going to really do that in detail. I kind of think this is the key thing when it comes to persuasion and just kind of understanding the power or the skill set that Donald Trump kind of brings to the equation. Now, this Donald Trump's Rosie O'Donnell moment happened during a Republican debate where one of the moderators, Megyn Kelly, asked a very dangerous question that would have probably tripped up just about every other Republican on that stage. In fact, most politicians. So what we're going to do now is we're going to watch that clip from beginning to end, and then I'm going to comment on it and tell you what Donald Trump did and what he did to kind of get out of this trap and turn it to his advantage, which is what all great persuaders do.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account...
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everybody. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time, what I say is what I say. And honestly, Megan, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that. But you know what? We need strength, we need energy, we need quickness, and we need brain in this country to turn it around. That I can tell you right now.
Okay, so we see when the clip starts, Megyn Kelly asked Donald Trump a very dangerous question, and which is essentially framing him as being anti-woman, because he does have this whole history of seemingly flying off the cuff and making a variety of statements. Now, the typical response of most politicians who do not have Donald Trump's persuasion skill set would have been to try and deny the accusation and invade. So perhaps you might say, oh, I said these negative things, but I've also said all these positive things. I have these other women who have said positive things about me, and then try and move on to another subject. That's not good. That would not work, because it doesn't deal with the issue that you've said these things in the past, and those statements will keep coming up and will potentially keep being used against you. So what Donald Trump does is something actually quite brilliant, persuasion-wise, and he makes the comment, only Rosie O'Donnell. Now, right away when he says that, he changes the energy in the room right away. Because, again, people find it very funny because I think it's safe to say that most Republicans do not like Rosie O'Donnell. So the energy in the room goes from this dangerous question to Donald Trump's funny response. And you can see the entire crowd laughing, and Megyn Kelly is even kind of thrown off because right away the energy in that room has changed. So again, the focus has changed from the harsh question to his funny answer. And this is what all great persuaders can seemingly do, is they can take an energy, refocus it on basically whatever they want. And this is what Donald Trump is doing in this case. What Scott calls this pacing and leading. So in this case, he makes a joke and everybody's laughing, and now they're kind of on the same page as Donald Trump, not on the same page as Megyn Kelly's negative question. And at this point, when they're on the same page, you can then potentially lead them anywhere you want to, and this is what Donald Trump does. What he does next is what's called, or what Scott calls, the high ground maneuver. And the high ground maneuver means you raise the question to a high point that everyone can agree on. And in this case, what Donald Trump does is he starts talking about political correctness preventing real issues from being discussed. So before the high ground maneuver, they were talking about, Megyn Kelly attempted to ask about anti-women bias, anti-women statements, and Trump says, no, look, the country has real issues. Political correctness is preventing us from talking about these real issues, including the statements you were talking about that I've said in the past. I mean, I'm not denying them, but I'm not going to apologize for them either. But we got to put that aside, go to the high ground. The country is facing real issues, such as losing to China, Mexico, etc., etc. And that's what we have to do. And you see in the clip, the crowd cheers, and that's it. So literally, Megyn Kelly, with her question, almost threw a bomb onto the stage, and Donald Trump just diffused it and just threw it away. And it was interesting that in the book, Scott talks about how when he saw this is when he first realized that this is not normal and that Donald Trump could potentially become president. He actually describes him like walking closer to the screen as he sort of absorbed this whole interaction and thinking to himself that this was not normal. But if you want to understand why seemingly against all odds Donald Trump is often successful, you need to understand this clip. And it just shows you what a trained or an expert persuader can do. Now, in this section, Donald Trump, or Scott Adams, does talk about a few other things, which I'm just going to cover briefly. If you're interested in them, and I suggest you read the book because it is an excellent book. One thing he talks about is, in relation to Donald Trump, is Trump's talent stack. And the idea of the talent stack is that you may have a variety of talents and you may not be world class in any one of them, but if you put them together, they can produce something quite unique that can help you be quite successful. In Scott Adams' case, he will freely admit that he's not the best illustrator in the world, yet he can draw. He's not the funniest man in the room at any time, yet he's pretty funny. He has business experience, but he has multiple business failures. And he kind of goes on like that, but you put them all together, and he's able to produce things like Dilbert or write books. And Donald Trump is actually the same way. So Scott kind of describes and goes into detail on what Trump's talent stack actually is and how it allows him to be so effective. He also talks about the persuasion stack, and these are basically different levels that you can have to be persuasive. And again, I'm not going to go, this is all in the book, but the key thing to know about this is that emotional and visual persuasion is always much higher than logic and statistics. And if you watch Donald Trump, you see him doing this constantly. Oh, he also talks about how Trump made himself the most important person in the race. Again, this is a persuasion tactic as well. So if you remember when he was campaigning for the nomination, and also when he was running for president, but mainly for the nomination at first, he was seemingly constantly saying outrageous things that was getting all this media attention. But persuasion-wise, what's that doing? It's focusing all the attention on him. And the way our brains work is what we focus on becomes the most important thing. So if we're focusing on Donald Trump, it makes him seem important, and it kind of diminishes at that time the other 16 Republican potential nominees who are running. And what we focus on becomes important, and we also start thinking that he might be competent as well. And that's just how that particular persuasion play works. Finally, in this chapter, Scott talks about whether Trump is a natural persuader. And I think he kind of comes to the conclusion that he isn't, that these are all skills that he learned. Most importantly, when he was growing up, he sat in the pew, or his parents took him to a church in which Norman Vincent Van Peele was the pastor. Now, Norman Vincent Van Peele literally wrote the book on the power of positive thinking. And when you see Donald Trump running for the presidency, I mean, the whole idea of that book is that anything you can think you can do, or can potentially accomplish. And Donald Trump literally thought himself into the presidency. So in Scott's opinion, that was a very key moment in Donald Trump's life. And another thing he also talks about is just how Donald Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. And of course he didn't write it himself. He had a ghostwriter, but most of the ideas were his. But when you focus on The Art of the Deal and how to negotiate without even intending it, you're going to be studying persuasion. And I think that's why Scott feels that Donald Trump is as persuasive as he is because he literally wrote a book on it, or had someone write a book on it for him. In the next section, which I'm going to go over, we're going to talk about how you can use persuasion in business and politics. And so I'm looking forward to learning about that, and I hope you are too. If you have any questions on this section, feel free to ask them. Like I say, there's a lot of great stuff in this book, so if you're interested, there is a link at the bottom of the page. It is an affiliate link. It will help my channel. But other than that, I just want to thank you for watching, and until next time.